The music didn't stop. That's the first thing I remember. The room was still buzzing. Someone laughing near the wine bar, glassware clinking, a playlist of fake jazz echoing through the chandelier-lit room. But the conversations? They died instantly the moment she raised her hand and pointed directly at me. "There," she said. Just one word. "There." Like I was a problem she'd been waiting to delete. Like I was a typo in an otherwise perfect sentence. Every head turned. I felt a warm flush creep down my neck, the kind of heat that doesn't come from embarrassment, but from confusion so sharp it feels like an allergic reaction. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just stood next to the mini crab cakes, still holding a napkin that said Cinder and Row Creative, Q4 Bash. 10 seconds, she added, this time smiling. If you're still here in 10 seconds, I'll make sure you never forget what humiliation feels like. That's when I knew she wasn't joking. Someone chuckled nearby, that awkward kind of laugh people do when they're not sure if they should laugh. But no one joined in. No one rescued me. I wasn't someone's plus one. I wasn't a coworker. I wasn't a stranger. I was her husband, and she had just started counting out loud. 10. I scanned the room. No signs of distress. No laughter. No gasps. Just silence behind music. And her voice, so calm, so calculated, slicing through it like a scalpel. 9. I took a step forward, toward her, thinking maybe I misheard. Maybe this was a game. Some twisted office initiation I wasn't clued into. But her eyes didn't blink. 8. Behind her, someone was already taking out their phone. 7. She tilted her head slightly. Behind her shoulder, I saw a man lean in to whisper something in her ear. She didn't flinch. She didn't tell him to stop. He was too close, too confident, and she was too comfortable. 6. My throat tightened. My hands felt useless. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. All I could do was watch the way her fingers curled around the base of her champagne glass, like she was holding it just tight enough to break if she needed to. 5. I looked around the room again, hoping, somehow, someone would say something. That this was all for a prank video. That someone would shout surprise, or at least hand me a drink and pat me on the back for surviving. No one did, not even when she reached for. And that's when the screen behind her lit up. Because, apparently, 10 seconds was all she needed to ruin me completely. The screen behind her flickered to life with a soft hum. At first, no one seemed to notice. Everyone was still watching her. Still watching me. But then the room dimmed slightly, and the projector kicked in with its usual mechanical click, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. The first image that appeared looked harmless, an email inbox. A screenshot. No subject line. No context. Just a timestamp in the corner. 2:14 a.m. The second slide hit like a brick. It was a photo. Me. In our bedroom. Shirtless. Half asleep. A terrible angle. Mouth open. Eyes half shut. Caught in that vulnerable moment where no one wants to be seen, let alone displayed on a 10-foot screen in a room full of strangers. I staggered backward, heart slamming. A few gasps echoed from the audience, but no one moved. No one stopped it. My wife? No, Callista didn't flinch. She was still smiling, just barely, like she was hosting a casual PowerPoint presentation on the slow public death of a man's dignity. Then the messages appeared, blown up, word by word. A conversation. Not mine. Not hers, either. I scanned them frantically. Wait, is that him? Yeah, that's my husband. Pathetic, right? And then a response from the other person. Does he even know? And her reply? He thinks we're just going through a rough patch. LOL. That last part. That damn LOL. It burned. It stung in places I didn't even know could feel pain. That wasn't how we joked. That wasn't how we talked. That wasn't us. But apparently, that was her. Someone next to me whispered, "What the hell is this?" I wish I could have answered. The room was caving in, but no one was stopping it. No one turned the screen off. No one pulled a plug. And worst of all, she still hadn't said another word. Just stood there, watching me watch her destruction of me unfold. I started walking. Not toward the exit. I don't know where. My legs were just moving. Somewhere between shame and confusion. But before I could even reach the corner of the room, she raised her glass. To transparency, she said, loud and clear. Like a toast. Some people say it's overrated. I disagree. Everyone stood frozen, unsure if they were supposed to clap, or run, or pretend they didn't just witness a psychological execution dressed up in designer heels and dim lighting. And then the lights came back on. Just like that. She turned her back to me, and the man from earlier, the one who whispered in her ear, stepped forward and kissed her on the cheek. Like I was already gone. But I hadn't even made it to second one. I didn't leave. I couldn't. It wasn't pride or bravery or some twisted desire to stay and fight. It was paralysis. I stood near the hallway that led to the bathrooms, pretending to check my phone, pretending to breathe, pretending to exist. The music came back louder. People laughed again. It was like someone flipped a switch and rewrote reality without me in it. But they didn't forget. I could still feel their glances, their side eyes, the way conversation dipped when I passed too close. And she? Callista acted like nothing happened. She was in the center of the room again, surrounded by a tight circle of co-workers. One of them passed her another drink, red wine this time. The man who kissed her cheek earlier, I still didn't know his name, but I was beginning to suspect I should, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed so hard she touched his arm. I finally made it to the coat check, but not to leave. Not yet. I just needed somewhere to disappear. I stood behind a potted plant like a cliché in a bad sitcom, replaying the last half hour on loop in my head. What was that? A warning shot? A breakdown? Revenge for something I didn't even know I'd done? That's when someone approached me. Not Callista. Not the mystery guy. It was her boss. Rough night? He asked, as if we were chatting at a gas station over coffee. I nodded slowly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. He laughed. Not cruelly. Almost sadly. No misunderstanding, Corwin. Just bad timing. You weren't supposed to be here. What do you mean? I croaked. He hesitated. That was the worst part. He hesitated. Like he wanted to be merciful, but the script said otherwise. Look, I've always thought you were a good guy. But Callista, she's been writing her own ending for a while now. I'm just surprised she invited an audience. I'm her husband. I reminded him, like that was supposed to mean something. Not after tonight, he said gently. I think that's the point. And then he walked away. That was when I realized something that nearly made my knees buckle. The room wasn't shocked because of what she did. They were shocked she did it so publicly. They knew. All of them. Every smile that seemed too tight. Every handshake that lasted too long. Every, nice to meet you, that didn't look me in the eye. They had all been in on it. Watching. Waiting. Like an audience watching a slow-burning finale, just waiting for the last act to unfold. And I'd been the warm-up joke that went on too long. Suddenly the glass walls around the rooftop lounge didn't feel stylish. They felt like a cage. The air was thick, too thick. The kind of thick that means tears are close and control is slipping. I turned to finally leave. For real this time. And that's when I saw the envelope. Sitting on the ledge of the gift table. My name on it. In her handwriting. As if she'd planned everything. My fingers hovered over the envelope like it might burn me. The fact that it was left out in the open, with my name so neatly written in her looping, confident script, Callista wasn't trying to hide anything anymore. That was the part that made my stomach churn. This wasn't a mistake. It was choreography. I picked it up and immediately felt something off. It wasn't flat. Not a letter. Heavier. I slipped my finger under the seal and peeled it open slowly, afraid of what I might find. Inside was a key. Not just any key. Our key. The one to the safety drawer in the bedroom. The drawer she once called her sacred space. The drawer that held her journals, her old photos, and the ring box I used when I proposed. She never threw it out. She said it reminded her of who we used to be. I hadn't opened that drawer in years. She told me not to. I respected that. Too much, maybe. But now the key was in my hand. Cold. Metallic. Deliberate. The envelope had one more thing in it. A sticky note. No signature. No explanation. Just 2 words. Use it. Not please. Not I'm sorry. Just that. 2 words that felt more violent than if she had screamed at me in front of everyone. I tucked the key into my pocket, suddenly aware that everyone else had gone back to pretending I didn't exist. Music, laughter, champagne. As if the human sacrifice had already been offered and the party could resume. Callista didn't look at me. Not once. She was at the far end of the room now, holding court near the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her mystery man had disappeared, but her expression was brighter than ever. She didn't look relieved. She looked vindicated. I made it to the elevator without anyone stopping me. Not that anyone would. I don't think I've ever felt that invisible. Not even in high school, when I used to fake being sick just to avoid lunch. The ride down felt like it took hours. I clutched the envelope the entire time like it was a live wire. The lobby was empty, just the hum of vending machines and the reflection of myself in the glass doors as they opened to the night air. I should have gone home, slept, screamed, anything. But instead, I drove straight to the house. Our house. I didn't even turn the lights on when I walked in. The silence hit like a wave. I moved through the living room, past the couch she used to fall asleep on during those late-night reruns, past the kitchen with the sticky notes still on the fridge from 3 weeks ago, buy oat milk. I went upstairs. The bedroom door creaked open. It smelled like lavender and expensive detergent. Her half of the closet door was ajar. I noticed for the first time that some of her dresses were missing. I walked to the dresser, dropped to my knees, and unlocked the bottom drawer. At first, I thought it was empty. Then I saw the folder. Thick, bound with a gold ribbon. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. None of them included me. But every single one included him. I didn't know how long I sat on the bedroom floor with that folder in my lap. Time didn't feel real anymore. It moved sideways. Like I'd been shoved out of the timeline I was supposed to be living in, and now I was just watching someone else's life unfold. The photos weren't graphic or obscene, not in the way you might expect, but that almost made them worse. They were casual, intimate in a way I hadn't seen her be with anyone in years. Callista in a coffee shop, leaning across a table with both hands wrapped around a mug, smiling at whoever was taking the picture. Callista in the back seat of a car, barefoot, her legs curled up like she was completely at home. Callista at the lake house, wearing the same oversized hoodie she used to steal from me. Except now she was holding a beer I didn't recognize and resting her head on a shoulder that definitely wasn't mine. And then came the apartment shots. I recognized the walls, not from being there, but from how she described them once. The kind of place with those fake brick walls and ugly pendant lights, perfect for a guy who thinks whiskey shelves make him deep. I didn't know then that she was describing his place. Photo after photo, timestamp after timestamp. They weren't just random snapshots. They were organized, curated like an album. Like someone, maybe her, maybe him, had been building this quiet archive of their secret life, one picture at a time. But the worst part? One photo was warm. Literally. Still warm from being printed. I could feel it in my hands, the faintest trace of heat. She must have added it just before the party. It was her and him at that exact rooftop venue, taken maybe an hour before everything went down. She was adjusting his tie, laughing with her eyes closed. The background was full of people. One of them, blurred and unknowing, was me, standing near the drinks table like an idiot. I was in the picture, and I hadn't even known I was part of the story. I wanted to rip it in half. I wanted to tear every photo into shreds and throw them into the fireplace and pretend none of this was real. But I didn't. I just sat there, holding it, shaking so hard the photo fluttered in my grip like it wanted to escape. And then I noticed something strange tucked behind the last photo. Not paper, not a letter, a hotel keycard. One of those cheap plastic ones with a black magnetic strip and no logo. It had a sticky note on it, the kind we kept near the phone. Written in her handwriting, again. This time, only a number. Room 412. No time, no date, no instructions. Just that. Like she wanted me to find it. Like this was the next breadcrumb in whatever game she was playing. And despite every ounce of my pride screaming at me not to, despite the voice in my head saying, "You've suffered enough," I found myself reaching for my coat. Because there was one thing I needed more than answers. Proof. The drive to the hotel was almost silent. I kept the radio off because the idea of hearing music felt wrong. Like adding a soundtrack to my humiliation would somehow make it official. The keycard sat on the passenger seat, glowing in the dark each time I passed a streetlight, like it wanted to be noticed. Like it couldn't wait to finish what the night had started. The hotel was familiar, not because I'd ever stayed there, but because I'd driven past it 100 times and never imagined I'd end up walking through its doors at 1:17 a.m., holding the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. It was the kind of place that tried too hard to be elegant. Gold trim on fake marble. A lobby that smelled like citrus and antiseptic. The night manager didn't even look up as I walked past him. That part felt strangely comforting. The elevator ride was quiet. Slow. Every floor that ticked by made my chest tighter. I should have turned around. I should have burned the card and let it end with the envelope. But something deeper than curiosity, something almost masochistic, kept me moving forward. I needed to know how far she'd gone, what she was hiding, what she wanted me to see so badly. She left me a key like it was some twisted invitation to my own downfall. The hallway was dim, lined with abstract paintings and an eerie hum from overhead vents. I walked slowly. Room 410, room 411, then room 412. I stared at the number like it might change if I blinked enough times. My hand shook as I raised the card. It clicked on the first try. The door creaked open, and nothing could have prepared me for what I saw inside. It wasn't a hotel room. It was a replica of our bedroom. The same navy blue bedding we bought on our 3rd anniversary. The same bookshelf, down to the tiny chip on the second shelf. Even the framed photo on the nightstand. Us at the beach 3 summers ago, before everything started rotting from the inside, was the same. I stepped in slowly, afraid to breathe. It was like stepping into a memory I didn't agree to revisit. And then I noticed the walls, covered in printouts, photos, notes, texts, dozens of them. All of me. Screenshots of my emails, GPS logs from my phone, even printouts of my search history. Things like how to tell if your wife is cheating and why does she flinch when I touch her. My journal entries, pages of them, scanned and pinned to the wall. I didn't understand. Why would she have this? Why go through the effort to recreate our bedroom in some downtown hotel and plaster the walls with my digital shadow? Then I saw the camera, mounted in the corner, small, hidden if you weren't looking, a red light blinking, and just below it, a whiteboard. There were scribbles on it, arrows, circles, my name over and over again. But one phrase was written larger than the rest, underlined twice. He still doesn't know what it's really about. That's when I backed away. My knees nearly gave out. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something else. Something bigger. Something planned. And in that moment, standing in a fake version of my own bedroom, I finally understood something I had ignored for years. Callista didn't just fall out of love with me. She had been studying me. Like I was an experiment. Like I was never her husband. Just a subject. I don't remember deciding to sit down, but somehow I ended up on the edge of the fake bed, elbows on my knees, keycard still clenched in my fist like a weapon that had already failed me. My mind was splitting in two, half of me screaming to get out, the other half refusing to move. The smell in the room was almost identical to our actual bedroom. That lavender cedar candle she used to burn every night. I hadn't realized how closely I had associated that scent with safety until now, because here, it reeked of surveillance, of manipulation. And then the door clicked shut behind me. I turned fast. No one was there. No footsteps in the hallway. Just that soft, final click of the latch settling into place. I stood, reached for the handle, twisted. It wasn't locked, but something told me I was supposed to stay. That's when the speaker came on. I didn't even know there was a speaker. It must have been embedded somewhere behind the ceiling vent. Her voice filled the room, clear, calm, emotionless. "Don't panic, Corwin." I froze. "You're not in danger. Not physically. But if you're hearing this, it means you've finally done what I knew you would. You came looking for answers. So here they are." I looked around, trying to find the source. But there was nothing. Just the sound of her voice, recorded in perfect quality, like she'd made this in a podcast studio. "You always said I was too calculating, too cold, that I kept secrets. You weren't wrong. But you never asked why. Not really. You assumed it was about another man. That it was about boredom, or ego, or lust." She paused, and I could hear the faint inhale before she continued, like she wanted me to feel the weight of what was coming next. "But it was never about him. He was a tool, a variable. You were the experiment." My mouth went dry. I looked again at the whiteboard, those words etched in thick marker. "He still doesn't know what it's really about." I needed to see what you would do when you had nothing left to explain it all away. When the evidence stacked against your sanity, not your marriage. I wanted to know what a man like you, so desperate to be loved, so convinced you were the victim, would do when the floor dropped out. You didn't disappoint. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the nightstand. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her voice anymore. "You're probably wondering what was the point. Why go this far? Why humiliate you in front of people I barely know? Why build a fake bedroom? Why lie? Why betray?" The answer's simple. Silence for a beat. Then, because I could. The audio clicked off. No dramatic ending. No sign-off. Just those 3 words. Because I could. I stood there, staring at the speaker vent, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I had spent months blaming myself for everything going wrong, thinking I hadn't done enough, said enough, loved her enough. But this wasn't a failed marriage. It was a controlled demolition. She hadn't just wanted out. She had wanted to break me. Publicly, privately, systematically. And now, she had succeeded. At least, that's what she thought. But she forgot one thing. I had nothing left to lose. And when a man like me has nothing left, that's when he finally does something he never thought he could. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either. I just drove. No destination. Just me, the photo-stuffed folder in the passenger seat, and the lingering echo of her voice in my skull. Because I could. Those 3 words had haunted me for hours, until something shifted. It wasn't anger. Not entirely. It was clarity. She had spent months, maybe years, pulling strings behind my back, crafting a narrative, turning my life into a performance piece. But what she didn't realize was this. I had been paying attention too. Not to her lies, but to her patterns, her rhythms, the way she couldn't help but gloat, the way she wanted me to find things, photos, notes, recordings. That wasn't sloppiness. That was ego. And ego has blind spots. So I made a plan. The next morning, I went home and collected every scrap of the life we had built. Photos, receipts, text threads, old gifts, forgotten anniversary cards. I scanned them all, digitized everything. I found old voicemails, love notes, even her social media posts that contradicted her truth. Then I wrote a letter. Not to her, to everyone else. I told the story, not the pity party version, not the breakdown in room 412 version, but the one she didn't expect. The full truth. I posted it online, anonymously, but made sure it reached the right inboxes. Her employer, her friend group, her mystery man. I didn't smear her. I didn't insult her. I just showed the map. Let people connect the dots. Let her own words do the damage. Then I deactivated my socials, packed a bag, and drove west. I ended up in a small town near the mountains. A bookstore was hiring. They liked that I'd worked in a library. I told them my name was Corey, dropped the W, and nobody asked questions. I rented a room above a coffee shop. The walls creak when it rains, and the floor slants toward the window, but I like it. It's quiet. I sleep with the window open now. No cameras. No curated candle scents. Just wind and the occasional owl. Some nights, I still hear her voice in my head. But it's distant now. Muted. Like a movie I've already watched and finally stopped trying to rewrite. And the best part? I'm free. Not just from her, but from the version of myself I used to be. The man who begged for scraps of affection. Who confused manipulation with mystery. Who thought silence was love's companion instead of its grave. Now, I read until 2 a.m. I drink real coffee. I laugh without waiting to be told it's okay. I exist without permission. She thought breaking me would be the end of my story. But what she didn't count on was that I'd finally learn how to begin again.